Well, good morning and welcome to the gloomiest day I think I've ever seen. Tons of fog, some rain coming in, nice and dense cloud. So we're gonna see what we can find today. I wanted to try something different and take you along with me on a little bit of a landscape photography outing. I'm gonna go for a short hike and see if I can find some waterfalls. We're at a park called Clifty Falls in southern Indiana, and it's basically a big gorge with a creek that runs down the middle of it. And there's some bigger waterfalls, some little ones, but I want to try out a new lens I got. I picked up the Laowa 9mm f2.8 lens, so it's an ultra wide, and I've realized that it's pretty challenging to use, at least at home. So I want to try to get up close to some waterfalls and see if I can get the whole scene in. But anyway, hope you enjoy it. Come along with me as we try to find some photos. About halfway there, and the bad news is the weather has not cleared up even a little bit. I don't think it's going to. It's just a big cloud down here. The good news is you may hear in the background some rushing water, and it sounds pretty strong today. So I'm encouraged. I think that when we do get to the waterfall, it's actually going to be pretty strong as well. So I'm excited for it. Let's keep going. So the waterfalls are definitely going. You can see that it's kind of messy. There's some dead logs that have fallen. There's a dead tree up near that top waterfall. And unfortunately, over the last couple of years, it's gotten messier and messier. I have photos standing in this exact spot where there's basically just a clear view of all the waterfalls behind me. But just as things die, that kind of happens. So we're gonna keep working our way up, and I'm gonna see if I get to that top waterfall, if it's clear enough to get a nice full view with that 9mm. I'd really like to pull in some, there's a little beach shore there, so pull in a little bit of that and give it a shot. Well, here we are, and the waterfall is beautiful, right? So you can see that that bank right there is where I plan to set up a nice wide shot. And there's some freshly fallen dead trees, or trees dead from a storm, I guess. We're gonna see if we can make our way over to this side and get some sort of shot coming from the side of the waterfall. But like I said, it keeps getting messier and messier. And I again have shots of this exact spot, perfectly clean. There's actually one tree coming down the waterfall that was really pretty, but this is gonna make it messy enough that that's kind of not worth it anymore. But we'll move over here. Okay, so I already got the shots in the camera. Wanted to just figure it out, and then I'm gonna tell you what I did. So we've got the camera way down low to the ground, obviously. And then I've got the rocks in the foreground and the waterfall in the background, as you'd expect. These are more or less the settings that I used for this shot. I did have to focus stack. Like I'm gonna have to put 4 or 5 shots together because I shot at f4 to keep the ISO low enough with a 1/13 of a second shutter. I wanted to use a faster shutter like that so you keep some texture in the water. So there's still some of that. It's like stringy, or you can see the movement without it being just a big blob. So anyway, I shot with that. I have a polarizing filter on. You can see that something like this is what you get without it. But when you can roll in that polarizer, you lose the reflections off the surface of the water in front of the waterfalls, and it really adds a lot of contrast. So anyway, f13, I shot at f4, and then I'm gonna stack it together. I overexposed by 1 stop because the sky is thrown off the metering. It's just a white sky anyway, so you can tell that the sky's blown out in these shots, but even if you had it, it'd just be white. And then The meter, it's metering for about ISO 400 right now. Not ideal necessarily, but it's better than getting the wrong shot. So I'm going to take one shot at f16 and then crank the ISO up. I'm also going to take one at f16 with the shutter speed adjusted, so I can use ISO 100, which is probably going to be like 5 seconds or something. So I just want to have options when I get back to the computer. Some tips, I don't know if this helps you, but some tips are, obviously have a polarizing filter. Anytime you're shooting with any sort of moisture, or even just in the woods when there's some reflections on the leaves, a polarizing filter makes a huge difference. And I also, on a day like this where it's just cloudy as all get out, I will switch to cloudy white balance even though I shoot raw, and that gives me a little bit better idea of what the final product's going to look like. You can't really overcome the fact that it's kind of gray and dull out here, but when you switch to that cloudy white balance, you get a little bit more of the yellow in the photo, or warmer tones. It's at least got a little bit more dynamic look to it. It's not just black and white almost. So anyway, here's the final product, assuming that my stitching worked and all those stacks went together. If not, then I'll show you what I got as a backup. Okay, so before we walk away from this spot, I did have one more thing I wanted to try. I brought my 11 to 22 millimeter along with me. If you watched my last video, that's one of my lenses I've been carrying for a while now. And I shot from the same position, so kept the tripod in the same spot. Obviously, you lose a little bit of the foreground because of the narrower field of view, but trying to get roughly the same framing with the polarizer, same settings and all that. So I'm gonna put those side by side just to give you an idea. Obviously, the 9mm has a wider field of view. I will say that a couple nice things about the 11 to 22, it has autofocus, obviously. And it's also a little bit more normal focal length. At 9mm, you're talking, what, a 14.5mm full frame equivalent. So that is a wide lens. And I've done real estate photography like once or twice, so I can obviously benefit from it there. But in terms of landscape photography, which is my primary discipline, if you want to call it that, I think that the 11 to 22, just right off the bat, I think it might be a more natural fit, but I'm still going to keep playing with the 9mm, see how it works out in day-to-day kind of use. So.